When it comes to Henry VIII's tragic wives, many think of Anne Boleyn, beheaded and betrayed. But what if I told you the real tragedy belongs to a woman history almost forgot? Anne of Cleves, the queen Henry rejected the moment he saw her, the woman he called ugly, the wife he refused to touch. And here's what nobody talks about. While she was still his queen, still his wife, Henry openly carried on an affair with a teenage girl, right under her nose, in front of the entire court. But it gets worse. Anne was so sheltered, so innocent, that she didn't even understand what marriage meant. She thought holding hands and saying goodnight was enough. She had no idea what her husband was doing to her. Then Henry threw her away, and for 17 years she lived alone. No husband, no family, just empty castles and servants who pitied her. When she died at 41, sick and forgotten, she wrote a will, and hidden in that legal document is the most heartbreaking truth about the loneliest queen in history. But there is one thing she didn't mention, something so obvious that historians still argue about it today.
If this story has already hooked you, like and share this video to support History Untold.
Before Anne of Cleves became the rejected queen, she was just a girl in Germany. September 1515, Swan Castle near Dusseldorf. Duke Johann II of Cleves and his wife, Maria, welcome a daughter. They named her Anna. Her mother doesn't just have a title, she actually rules. In Germany, women can govern, hold power, and make real decisions. Anne grew up watching this. She has 3 siblings, Sibylla, Wilhelm, and Amalia. The sisters are close, spending their childhood together at Burg Castle with their mother. Their education is different from English princesses. Anne studies property laws, taxation, and estate management. She learns to cook with her own hands, to sew, to make clothing. German noblewomen are expected to understand every detail of running an estate. Anne loves riding. She's fearless on horseback, joins the family hunts regularly. Life follows a pattern. Mornings for work, men handle politics, women handle domestic tasks. Afternoons for socializing, music, and entertainment. Evenings for elaborate dinners, sometimes 9 courses for 300 guests. She's happy. Religion in her family is complicated. Mother Maria, strictly Catholic. Father Johann, Catholic but sympathetic to Lutherans. Sister Sibylla, passionate Lutheran reformer. Brother Wilhelm, Catholic but friendly with Protestants. Sister Amalia, devoted to Protestant reform. This religious fluidity probably teaches Anne something: flexibility, tolerance, how to bend without breaking. At 11, Anne is engaged to the Duke of Lorraine's son. 7 years later, it's been cancelled. She's 18 now, but doesn't seem upset. She's content at home with her mother. 1538. Anne is 23. Her father dies. Her younger brother Wilhelm is now Duke of Cleves. He makes the decisions. He controls Anne's future. Across the sea, King Henry VIII needs a new wife. Jane Seymour died in childbirth. His minister, Thomas Cromwell, suggests an alliance with Cleves. Cromwell reaches out to Wilhelm. Henry wants portraits, wants to see the sisters. Wilhelm refuses for months. The English ambassadors finally see Anne and Amalia from a distance, heavily veiled. Henry is impatient. He makes an offer Wilhelm can't refuse. No dowry required. He'll pay Wilhelm 100,000 florins. Wilhelm accepts immediately. He writes that Anne looks forward eagerly to the wedding. But nobody asks Anne what she wants. November 1539, Anne says goodbye to her mother, her sister Amalia, her brother Wilhelm, to everything she's ever known. She's 24. She'll never see her family again. The journey to England is long. Bad weather delays the crossing. While waiting in Calais, English nobles entertain her. When Anne finally lands in England, people line the roads, cheering. They seem genuinely happy she's here. Every noble writes to Henry. She's lovely, cheerful, as beautiful as the portrait. Hans Holbein's portrait shows her looking serene and elegant. People describe her as tall, slim, blue-eyed, and blonde. Everything seems perfect. The wedding is planned for Christmas, postponed to January 6, 1540. Henry is restless, anxious to meet his bride. On New Year's Day, he decides he can't wait. He has a romantic plan. He'll arrive in disguise, and his true love will recognize him instantly. It's an English courtly tradition. Henry thinks this will be magical. He has no idea he's about to make the worst mistake of his life. Henry is no longer the golden prince of his youth. He's obese now, his leg rotting and stinking, leaning on a stick as he limps toward the woman he expects to fall in love with him on sight.
New Year's Day, 1540. Henry bursts into Anne's room wearing a disguise. He strides up to her, kneels, kisses her hand. Anne is shocked. Who is this strange man? Why is he touching her? This isn't how things are done in Germany. She's repulsed. She turns away. Henry is humiliated. She was supposed to recognize him, to play along. Instead, she's rejecting him. He storms out, throws off his disguise, returns wearing royal purple. Now Anne understands. That was the king. She bows deeply, terrified. Henry kisses her briefly, coldly, and leaves. Henry returns to Greenwich in a rage. She's nothing like the portrait. I like her not. He demands to know if the marriage can be cancelled, but it's too late. Cancelling would anger Cleves, destroy political alliances. Henry is trapped, and he blames Anne. The wedding proceeds. January 6, 1540. The morning after the wedding night, Thomas Cromwell nervously asks how things went. Henry's response is brutal. He makes crude comments about her body. He doubts she's even a virgin. He tells his doctors he's perfectly capable sexually, just not with her. What Henry is really doing is building a case for annulment. But in doing so, he publicly humiliates his wife, turning the entire court against her. Within weeks, he's telling his council that God won't allow him to consummate the marriage. He orders them to investigate Anne's old engagement. His counselors understand exactly what he wants. February 1540. Anne senses something is wrong, but she can't quite name it. She tries to please Henry, smiles when he's near, and believes their quiet life together is normal. He still dines with her, still lies beside her every night, but only for show. The court whispers. The king is distant, cold, and behind closed doors, gossip spreads like wildfire. Does the queen even know what marriage means? She truly doesn't. Anne grew up in a household where men and women were kept apart. No one ever explained what happens between a husband and wife. She believes that holding hands, sharing a bed, and kissing goodnight are what make a marriage real. When her ladies asked about her relations with the king, Anne answers with innocence that silences the room. He kisses me, takes my hand, and says goodnight. She looked around the room with a gentle laugh. Is this not enough? She arrived in England, married a king, and became queen all within weeks. She barely speaks the language. She doesn't understand the politics around her. She doesn't know she's already been replaced, that Henry has already moved on. By spring 1540, he's openly crossing the Thames every evening to Lambeth Palace, visiting his new mistress, Catherine Howard, 16 years old, the Duke of Norfolk's niece, one of Anne's own ladies-in-waiting. Londoners are outraged. They feel sorry for Queen Anne, but Anne probably has no idea what's happening.
June 24, 1540. Henry sends Anne to Richmond Palace. His excuse? Plague in London. It's a lie. Less than 3 weeks later, Henry's representatives arrive with a document. The king wants a divorce. The marriage was never consummated. Her old engagement was legally binding. If she agrees, she'll be treated kindly. Anne breaks down. She bursts into tears, sobbing. She refuses. She summons the ambassador from Cleves. But within 1 day, Anne calms down. Accept the divorce, be disgraced. But why did she accept this disgrace? And what will the dangerous Henry do to her? Anne grew up hearing stories. Catherine of Aragon, humiliated and divorced. Anne Boleyn, beheaded. Anne makes her decision quickly. She accepts. She's gracious, calm. She tells Henry she hopes to still enjoy his company sometimes. Henry is shocked. He expected her to fight, to threaten him with war from Cleves. Because she gives him what he wants so easily, Henry is generous to her now. July 12, 1540. Henry offers incredible terms. She can return to Germany or stay in England with £4,000 annually, a fortune, plus multiple estates. Richmond Palace, Bletchingley Manor, Hever Castle, Anne Boleyn's former home. He declares Anne is still a virgin, free to remarry. He gives her the title, the king's beloved sister. She'll be welcome at court, have precedence over every woman except the current queen and his daughters. Anne accepts. She goes further. She tells Henry he can read all her letters to her family before she sends them. She writes to Wilhelm, "I'm happy. I'm staying in England." And just like that, Anne of Cleves disappears from public attention. July 1540. Anne is free. For the first time, no husband, no father, no brother controls her. She's wealthy, independent. She lives quietly on her estates for 17 years. She's described as kind and generous to servants. She gets along well enough with Henry's final wives, Catherine Howard before her execution, Catherine Parr after. One quiet, cryptic moment stood out. At Catherine Parr's wedding to Henry, Anne smiled faintly and said, "Madame Parr is taking a great burden unto herself." Was it jealousy speaking? A warning? Or was she thinking of poor Catherine Howard, beheaded at just 19? No one dared to ask, and will never truly know. She remains close to Henry's children, Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward. She'd tried to be a loving stepmother. Now she strengthens those relationships. Even Mary, who initially distrusted Anne, comes to love her. Anne's approach to religion is fascinating. She's incredibly flexible. She arrives as an Anglican. When Edward becomes king, she declares herself Protestant. When Mary becomes queen, she declares herself Catholic. Was she practical or genuinely flexible? We don't know. Maybe growing up in a religiously divided family taught her that ideology matters less than survival. Anne attends court regularly during Edward's reign. She walks behind Elizabeth in Mary's coronation procession. But then came Wyatt's rebellion. Queen Mary suspects Anne might have helped the rebels. Anne is no longer invited to court, confined to her estates. No court, no friends, no purpose. For the first time in years, Anne of Cleves was truly alone.
Spring 1557. Anne's health begins to fail. She grows thinner, paler. She loses her appetite. Historians believe she's suffering from cancer in its final stages. She's only 41 years old. Anne lives at Chelsea Manor, surrounded by servants, but alone. No husband, no children, no blood relatives. They're in Germany, hundreds of miles away. Anne left her family 18 years ago and never saw them again. July 12, 1557, Anne realizes she's not going to recover. She calls for servants, lawyers. She dictates her last will. The will is written between July 12 and 15, 4 days. 4 days to get everything in order. 4 days to say goodbye on paper. She's in pain, but her mind is clear. She asks to be buried wherever Queen Mary thinks best. She wants a Catholic funeral. Even dying, Anne is trying to please others. But now comes the heart of the will, the part that reveals who Anne really was. After giving her burial instructions, Anne's first thought isn't about heaven or legacy, it's about her debts. She asks Queen Mary to let her executors collect rent from her estates until September 29, enough to pay what she owes. If that's not enough, her jewels, robes, and cattle can be sold. Money had grown tight in her final years. She owed people, and it weighed on her. The woman once shamed by a king didn't want to die with more disgrace. The same money would also cover her funeral and gifts for the people she remembered. Her will is divided into 4 parts: servants, charity, friends, and family. But it's messy. Names are scattered across the pages, added as she lay dying. Anne was trying to remember everyone before her time ran out. She had a household full of people: 18 gentlewomen, 8 daily gentlemen, grooms, yeomen, even children. She leaves them all a full year's wages. That's astonishingly generous. Most nobles gave a few weeks' pay. Anne gives 12 months. She knew these people had cared for her long after everyone else forgot she was a queen. She remembers individuals too. Dorothy Curson and another gentlewoman each get £100 to help them marry, an enormous sum. Mother Lovell, who cared for Anne during her illness, gets 40 shillings for her attendance upon us in this time of our sickness. Catherine Share and her daughter get exactly £66, 13 shillings and 4 pence, likely back wages. Every coin accounted for, every face remembered. But one section of her will break your heart. She lists 8 servants from Germany, the ones that followed her across the sea 18 years ago. She gives each of them 40 shillings for travel money. Anne had wanted to return home herself, back to Cleves, back to the quiet, safe world she once knew. But she couldn't. A divorced queen can't go home, not without shame, not without the whispers. So she makes sure they won't be stranded in a foreign land when she's gone, back to their families, back to the world she left behind at 24. She doesn't even forget the children in her household. They get 20 shillings each. Her doctor, John Simons, gets £20 for his great pains, labours, and travels. Her surgeon, Alan Blonde, gets £4. She even sets aside black mourning cloth, fine and expensive, so her servants can dress in black when she dies. Anne refuses to be unmourned. She refuses to be forgotten.
She asks Queen Mary herself to oversee everything. Smart move. Anne reminds her that Henry VIII once promised to treat her servants as his own. By invoking Henry's memory, she shields her people one last time, protecting them even after death. She leaves £4 for every poor person in her estates at Richmond, Bletchingley, Hever, and Dartford, people she never met. She leaves money for alms children to be educated, poor kids who lived under her care. That was rare in 1557. Anne knew what it meant to be powerless and far from home. Her executors are powerful men, the Archbishop of York, the Earl of Arundel, and 2 trusted knights. She rewards them with gold treasures, bowls, cups, and jeweled jugs she used every day. They're not just valuable, they're personal. But for her closest friends, Anne saves jewelry. rings with table diamonds, engraved initials, and mysterious stories behind them. One ring bears the letters H and I. Historians still wonder what they meant. Perhaps a memory she never quite erased. What do you think? Then come the most moving gifts. Anne's family, her brother Wilhelm, her sisters Amalia and Sibylle, the ones she hadn't seen since leaving Germany. She sends them precious rings, a heart-shaped diamond, a pointed one, a ruby glowing red as her family's crest. Each ring a final message across the sea. Did they cry when the boxes arrived? Did they remember the sister sent away to marry a king who called her ugly? And finally, she remembers Henry's daughters. Queen Mary gets her finest jewel. Princess Elizabeth gets the second best. Anne never forgot them. She'd been their stepmother for only 6 months, but she stayed loyal for 17 years. She even asks Elizabeth to employ Dorothy Curson, the servant she cherished most. Her will is filled with generosity, money for the poor, education for children, rings for families she never saw again. And yet, something is missing. Her houses. Anne's grand homes, Hever, Chelsea, Richmond, and Dartford, don't appear in her will, because they were never truly hers. Henry gave them to her for life. When she dies, they go back to the crown. Even in death, she's still bound by his rules. She lived richly, but never freely, not powerful. Everything returns to the crown, and can only give away her personal possessions, money, jewels, plates, clothing. This is heartbreaking. Anne has no children to inherit from her, no permanent legacy. When she dies, the crown takes back everything. It's like she was never really a queen at all, just a woman borrowing a royal life for 17 years.
July 16th, 1557. Just 4 days after finishing her will, Anne of Cleves died. She's 41 years old. Some sources say 42. She dies surrounded by strangers in a foreign country. Think about this. She left Germany at 24 years old. She thought she was going to be Queen of England forever. She thought she'd have children, grandchildren, a dynasty. Instead, she got 6 months of marriage, a humiliating divorce, 17 long years of silence. And in the end, she died alone. All because a king called her ugly. After her death, Queen Mary keeps her promise. She chooses the burial site personally. She orders vigil to be kept for Anne every night until the funeral. The funeral is set for August 4th, 1557, nearly 3 weeks after Anne's death. Mary is giving Anne honor, a grand state funeral fit for a queen. Anne of Cleves is buried in Westminster Abbey, on the south side of the high altar, near where Mary and Elizabeth will one day rest. Even in death, she's close to the stepdaughters she loved. Her tomb is plain. For centuries, it had no inscription. Tourists walk past without knowing who lies there. Only in the 1970s was her name finally carved in stone. Anne of Cleves, Queen of England, born 1515, died 1557. Even her grave tells her story. Quiet, hidden, humble. A woman forgotten by history, but remembered by those who knew her heart. Anne of Cleves, the queen who was rejected, the woman who gave everything, and the soul who died trying to make things right. In the end, Anne of Cleves didn't need a crown to prove her worth. Her kindness became her legacy. Her will became her voice. And her story, her quiet, aching story, still echoes beneath the stone of Westminster Abbey. She died forgotten by kings, but remembered by kindness. That's a legacy worth remembering.
But before you go, let me leave you with one final mystery. Remember how Henry VIII gave her the right to remarry anyone she chose.
She was 24 years old, wealthy, free, and legally able to marry. So why didn't she? For 17 years, Anne lived alone, never took another husband, never even seemed to try. Was she too afraid after what happened with Henry? Too traumatized to trust another man? Did she prefer her independence? Or did she secretly love someone she couldn't have? What do you think? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And if Anne's story moved you, hit that like button so more people remember the Queen who was forgotten. Subscribe for more untold royal stories, because history still has secrets waiting to be uncovered.